So welcome back guys to another video, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about a console I haven't talked about yet in my video game memories. I've talked about my journey on getting a Nintendo, Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, N64, PlayStation, so many consoles, but this one was kind of a journey because it's something I had no interest in when I was a lot younger, and as I've gotten older I really wanted the console, and that of course is the Sega CD. Now, when the Sega CD initially released, I remember I was like a little kid, and I was probably like in my, I was probably like 8 or 9 years old when it was first announced, and I had no desire to get a Sega CD because I had my eyes on the Sega Saturn, which was right around the corner, the PlayStation, and the N64, and by the time the Sega CD came out, I knew some people that had it. They kind of talked down on it. They said that the Sega CD didn't really have a whole lot of games for it. There was a lot of FMV games, and even when you watch the Angry Video Game Nerd, that's what he thrived on, was talking about these FMV games. And it wasn't until I started getting more into collecting and I found other YouTube channels, mainly Games of War, and I watched him gush about the Sega CD library, that I was like, man, I really need to get this console, because despite all the FMV sequence games, there's actually a pretty good amount of games that you can get for it. And what I did is I went over my entire Sega CD library, and I took a stack full of games that I really enjoy, that I definitely should think you guys should check out. Now, first one I'm going to talk about is Solfease. Really fun shooter. I had so much fun playing this. It's a really affordable game as well. I got this at a Second Charles for only $4, and it's a lot of fun. If you love arcade style shooters, this is definitely one to check out, and the soundtrack is really good. Next up, of course, you can't have a Sega CD without the Sonic CD. Oh man, this is such a great Sonic game. Some people may even say this is the best Sonic the Hedgehog game, and it has a lot of replay value with it, with the fact that you can go through the past and the future with the different halfway points. So initially you can get through a stage different ways and different paths, so that makes it really interesting. You guys can get this on the Xbox or PlayStation Network, and you can also get it on the GameCube's Sonic Gem Collection, but nothing beats the OG Sonic CD. Such a great game. Plus that Sonic Boom song is just so fun. I love that song. Also, the sequel to M.U.S.H.A. If you guys know about M.U.S.H.A, one of the most sought after Sega Genesis games that a lot of people wanted, but they also made a sequel for it called Robo-LS on the Sega CD. Great shooter. I love the fact that it's mixed mechs with this like Japanese style samurai era. It is so much fun. The soundtrack's great. It's challenging. The power-ups are addicting. I cannot stress enough how much I love Robo-LS. This is a great game, and it took me a long time to get a copy of this, but I found it for a good price, and I cannot be any more happier. I absolutely love this game. Also, Prince of Persia. Now, Prince of Persia has been on numerous ports. This is not a Sega CD exclusive by all means, but the Sega CD version definitely has a certain charm to it that I really enjoy. Maybe it's the beginning cutscenes, maybe it's the remastered music, but if you really want to play a really fun puzzle platformer, definitely check out Prince of Persia if you haven't already. This is just a timeless classic, and oh man, I love this game so much. It's so challenging though. Another game is Potful Mail on the Sega CD. Now, I did an in-depth review of this on my channel a couple of months ago, and I'll have a link on the description below so you guys can check that out if you want to watch a more explanation of why I think this game is so awesome. But it's a great 2D action style RPG, and Working Designs does such a great job translating their games, and you're definitely going to be hearing some more of these guys while I talk about the Sega CD, because they had a big hand in developing some great games when it came to bringing games over to the West, and Potful Mail was definitely one of them. And speaking of Working Designs, like I said, you have Lunar, Silver Star Story, and Lunar Eternal Blue. And what can I say? These are great RPGs that I probably would have missed out on if I just thought that the Sega CD was full of games like Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch and and the Crisscross game. But this is a lot of fun. I really enjoy the story to it. Beginning cutscenes with the anime was really awesome, and it was re-released on the PlayStation, and those versions are a lot of fun. By all means, though, I love the Sega CD version. I love the fact that even the NPCs have their own dialogue. I would just spend hours going through all the different towns and talking to people just to see what they're going to say next. I loved it. And by far one of my favorite shooters on the Sega CD, of course, is Lords of Thunder. This game is so much fun. I love the fact that it has kind of like that Mega Man-esque style of gameplay where you kind of choose what world you want to go to. You can customize your weapons and purchase different items. And not to mention the soundtrack. The soundtrack is absolutely amazing. I'd have to say, if Yngwie Malmsteen made a soundtrack, it would probably sound like Lords of Thunder. It's full of just blazing power metal and guitar riffs and thumping bass. I love it, and double bass on the drums. It's such a great soundtrack, but the game itself is just as amazing. I cannot stress enough how much fun this game is. And another game I want to talk about, of course, is the original Mortal Kombat. Now, Mortal Kombat's been on several systems, but by far, in my opinion, this is probably the closest to the arcade we had at that time. I mean, it took everything we loved about the Genesis version, including having blood, but also up the ante with the music and a little bit of the visuals. It doesn't look that much different than the Genesis version, but just enough that it could kind of give you a little bit of bragging rights in the playground. Power Level Amy actually gave me this, and what was really cool, and I think you guys can agree with me, that when you get those old style games and they have like little codes in the back of it, she put some like little cheat codes in here, like turbo and immortality and stuff like that. I think that's really cool. That's one of the things I love about getting retro games. I'll just go in the booklet and just like flip through it and just see if anybody's putting like crazy notes or anything like that. Now, I'm not a big sports game fan. I don't really like a whole lot of sports in general, but NBA Jam is freaking awesome. I love this game so much, and I love the Sega CD version. They updated the roster to it. It's more like the arcade counterpart. It's a great pick up and play game. That's what I like the most about it. Even if you don't know all the rules to basketball, it's not so much of a simulation as an arcade game. I really enjoy NBA Jam. I know they re-released NBA Jam not so long ago on some other consoles, but I didn't play the newer versions. I kind of stopped after Tournament Edition. But NBA Jam, boom shakalaka, that's a good freaking game. And the last one I want to talk about, a lot of people talk about movie games, about how much movie games suck, and sometimes that's kind of true, but the Terminator on the Sega CD is so much freaking fun. I really enjoyed this game. It's a run and gun shooter. If you guys are big fans of games like Contra or Alien 3 on the Genesis, you'll feel right at home. I enjoy playing as Kyle Reese and just blowing the hell out of different Terminators and stuff like that. And be perfectly honest, I'm a bigger fan of the Terminator than T2. I love T2, don't get me wrong with it, but I love the horror aspect that the original Terminator had, and they kind of captured that with this. It's a lot of fun. I highly recommend it, and again, another fantastic soundtrack. Now, if you guys are wanting to get yourself a Sega CD, of course, they have different models. The Model 1 looks very great with the Model 1 Genesis, but it's probably your most defective Sega CD to get out there because it's actually got a moving tray and those motors kind of start wearing out. The Sega CD Model 2 is probably the most reliable, and it goes the best with a Model 2 Genesis, and I had that for a very long time, and I had a lot of fun using that. But lately, I've been playing Sega CD on something I got a couple of years ago, and that's the Sega CDX. The Sega CDX is by far the best version of the Sega CD, and I was very lucky to get a Sega CDX. I got it from a good friend of mine, but that console's a little hard to come by. So if you can find it at like some sort of like thrift store or flea market, or maybe talk to some fellow collectors and get yourself a Sega CDX, I highly recommend it, because one of the things too that makes that version of the console so much better is the fact that it only has one power brick adapter. You don't have to hook up two adapters into one unit. That makes it so much easier, trust me. Especially when you start going into the the 32X. You start putting the 32X, the Sega CD, and the Sega Genesis. You almost need a whole power strip just for that, but it's freaking awesome. But anyway, guys, what are some of your favorite Sega CD games? Definitely leave a comment below. I know I left some of them out, but I was mainly wanting to stick to the ones that I really enjoy in my collection. So, of course, I didn't mention Snatcher or anything like that, or Night Trap, but those were really fun games too. As always, guys, definitely leave a comment below. Love to hear from you. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing, and as always, happy gaming. Can't get enough of Excess Gaming Podcast? Be sure to check out our audio podcast on Podomatic.com. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. And if you have a YouTube channel or podcast you'd like to share, be sure to check us out on Facebook on our group page and join the community. As always, guys, thank you so much for all the support, and happy gaming.